All right, I'll get started with the intro. Thank you so much for coming. Just as a reminder, or to start the meeting off, this is an LSA office hours. We will be talking about all things LSA. So if you are the primary or submitter or an HMIS admin working on the LSA, or anyone else that is working on the LSA longitudinal systems analysis, data cleaning and review period this year for your COC, you are in the right place. If you do not work on the LSA, this might not be very relevant, but you're welcome to stick around and hear, some of the questions that come up. Today, we are going to be leading this the same way we did last week, where I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction. We'll go over timeline again, resources, and then we'll do a Weebly update and have Q&A. So the timeline, we started this on November 1st. It's been about a month and a half, and we have about a month left to go. That January 11th is our current deadline, and we have a couple more weeks of December before you'll see in that gray period, we are taking a break for the holidays. What that means is that your liaison and the regional inboxes will not be monitored over those holidays. They might be monitored if your review team is in the office, but there is no expectation on our staff team. So you might get an email back from there, and if you do, that's why, but we are, there'll be an out of office message up for those regional inboxes, and we hope, you feel free to take the time to, take a break from the LSA as well. If you will be working that week and you do have time-sensitive questions, the AAQ desk will still be open and you can submit questions through there. If you have a not time-sensitive question, you can go ahead and still send an email to the regional inbox, and your liaison will get back to you whenever they are checking their inbox, which might not be till the 3rd or 4th. I say 4th just because it might take them a while to get through the emails, but someone will be monitoring the inbox on the 3rd. If you have any questions about the timeline or concerns as we go forth in the next couple weeks, definitely reach out to your liaison and they'll help you kind of troubleshoot your next steps and what to do if you are having concerns about getting through all your flags before the 11th. I'm not going to spend much time on these, but I do just want to note these were in the last office hours as well last week, which should be posted soon, maybe tomorrow or Thursday, with the links and where everything is on either the HMIS lead webinars or our previous office hours. And I do have the links to, so office hours number 1 and number 2, talking about the submission guides, manual, common issues, flags library, etc., are already posted. You can find them on the HUD Exchange, and then office hours Q&A from last week will be posted in the next day or 2. We also have here, some of these resource links exist in the first 2 office hours, and all of these will also be on the 3rd office hours posted this week. You can also ask your liaison for any of those, and you might see your review team referencing some of these when they write notes back to you in your warning flags. So definitely you don't have to wait or find this if you want it more quickly, but this also allows you to not have to wait on your liaison to find the resources. There are also resources, a lot of these resources are also in the Common Flags library, so if you can find that, then you can find a lot of these other ones. And then this is our last office hours of the year. We will have more office hours in January, and more information on those will be coming in the next week or so. And that leaves us our Weebly update.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Kira. I'll be just giving everybody what we now refer to as the Weebly update, which is basically the status of outstanding issues in HDX. Also, I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I'll just go over one thing that we covered in the last office hours, which was first how to get to what we call the Weebly page, which is the HDX issues page. So if you're in HDX, you can easily navigate to the Weebly page by clicking on the link in this blue banner. So when you click on that link, that'll take you to this page, which looks just like this. So now just talking about what we have here, the most recent update that we have from late last week was that the what we refer to as the yellow banner issue has been addressed. That was basically if you'd been in the system before last Thursday, instead of this green announcement, you would have seen a yellow one that was basically just a caution to some COCs who had met certain criteria about their kind of a pattern of submissions may have lost some notes if they met those criteria, basically. So we wanted to give just make folks aware of that. That issue has been addressed, and so we shouldn't see any issues going forward with losing notes. Basically, we just want to reassure everybody that your notes are never lost in the system. They can be resuscitated. You might just have to get in touch with your liaison to do that. But as a fail-safe, and what I'm instructing my communities that I'm reviewing to do is to always make sure you download your errors and warnings by clicking on the associated export button. So that'll show up like right here I don't want to access anybody's data set here because this is the live site, but when you get into your submission, you'll see an export button, and that'll be the way that you can export your warnings and errors so that you can have a recorded version backed up just in case. So that has been that's been addressed. Basically, there shouldn't be any issues going forward with that. There are some COCs that lost their warning flag statuses. We've put in a push to address those, and your liaison should be communicating with you about that. And then there's another subset of COCs that did already lose their warning flag statuses. And basically, they'll be following up with you about reinstating those because we have those saved, and we'll just need to access them. So the bottom line is if you do have any more issues, just talk to your liaison, and they'll be happy to help you with it. Otherwise, I just want to call folks' attention to this other outstanding issue, which is that there is a small minority of cases where flag IDs will change. Even though they're identifying the same issue, the flag IDs themselves will change from one upload to the next. Basically, this happens in a small number of cases with the flags that are these numbers. I'll just zoom in a little bit so that's a little clearer. And that's basically if the underlying data for one of those projects changes. So basically, like if the flag is edited or if a project is added, then basically the project ID is used as one of the components of the flag ID. It's used to identify the flag. So if that's changed, then the corresponding flag will change too, which will mean that it will appear that you've lost your notes. So that's another good reason just to download your export also. And then basically, there are still some COCs that from time to time are experiencing one of these server processing errors. Upon upload, please just get in touch with your liaison to follow up with that. The instructions are to submit an AAQ, and that can be useful too, but it's probably a better bet for you to get in touch with your liaison. And just as a helpful note, two more things while I have everyone's attention. The AAQ is very easily accessible if you come down here at the footer. You just click on that Ask a Question link, and that'll take you right to the AAQ. As Kiara was talking about, that can be a useful place to get some more immediate support, especially if you're working over the holiday or the holiday week. And then finally, if you do have any more questions, it's very useful for you to include the name of your COC in to identify yourself. AK 500, for example, just your state and your 3-digit code. So that can often help us, especially if you have an issue that's specific to you, to target our attention. I'll now take a look at the chat, and then we can start responding to questions there.
Yeah, I have one that I think will be easy for you to answer just right now, Sean. Should we be trying to re-upload at this point or wait till formal notice?
Hi Teddy. Yes, you have the green light to continue uploading. So the system should be functioning great. We have folks reporting that it's functioning now. So yeah, go ahead. Let her rip.
And I would like to just put two other things that I forgot to say. One is that you might notice, for those of you that are new or had been here last week, you can submit questions to everyone or to all panelists. We are working behind the scenes and assigning questions and finding answers for you, and people will pop on with the answers as we have them. So if you are welcome to use either one of those. If you want people to see your question, or you can put it in everyone, or if you want to chat with each other. But if you don't want everyone to see your question, you can use all panelists. Those are the two options are there. And I think, Miriam, we can take down the PowerPoint now. There was something else that I was going to say, and I've completely forgotten it. So,
Maybe
Victoria, yeah.
Sorry, just while you're
Okay.
thinking about it, I just want to be totally clear, Teddy, just in case there was any confusion at all. The formal notice has been issued. It is that green announcement on the Weebly page. So that you do have the formal notice. Yeah.
And this is, I don't think, what I was trying to remember, but you can, for what Shad said about putting your COC number, that's always helpful when you're reaching out to your liaison, but they will probably know it, especially if you've been talking to them a lot. But it helps, just because we get a lot of COCs. It's particularly useful, I think, in this chat Q&A, and if you submit an AAQ, instead of us having to follow back up with you and ask what COC you're asking about. So I will turn it over to Victoria to answer the question about flags being fixed and disappearing.
So I just wanted to speak to Lisa's note here that she has experienced her flags disappearing and having issues with that. I just wanted to reiterate your notes are still recoverable, and to please reach out to your liaison if you have not already, so we can get that taken care of for you. So I just wanted to add a little extra comfort there, hopefully.
And Antonio has reminded me of what the thing is that I forgot. Some people submitted topics that they'd like to discuss, particularly around head of households and HIT comparisons. And if that was you, you can just put in your specific question into the chat today so that we can give some more specific advice on whatever it is that you're have questions about.
Okay, I can speak to Antonio's question here. So our flag file identified some households with 0 or multiple heads of households, but did not identify the households. What's the best way you could recommend for tracking those down? Couple of different things. So if your vendor provides kind of built-in reporting around that data quality check, you can utilize that. Or if you haven't already, I would highly recommend that you use the HMIS CSV data quality tool. That does have a check for head of household issues, and it will be able to identify personal IDs that you can then dig into in your HMIS to resolve those issues. So just as like another PSA, the LSA files do not contain personally identifying information. And so it will tell you that there is an error, which is like the easy part, I feel like, but it won't be able to tell you household IDs or client IDs. You're going to have to go back to your HMIS and either utilize built-in vendor reporting or tools like the HMIS CSV data quality Excel sheets to track those down.
And for those of you who will ask, or I'm realizing did ask, here we go. So the latest version of the data quality tool is still not ready, but we think it will be ready very soon. Since we don't have another office hours until the beginning after the new year, I'm really hoping, I think everyone's hope is that it will be ready before our next office hours. And so since that's the case, we will definitely give you updates on the next office hours. But in the meantime, you should stay tuned in your listserv for when it's officially released. And I'm gonna just name this out loud. Megan Henry, one of the panelists in the chat, has said, like, as a reminder, please do not send me results from the data quality tool as it may have client information. And that is also why the LSA files don't have client information, is so that no PII is being shared. So when communicating with us in these office hours or the AAQ desk or your liaison, et cetera, just make sure that you're not sharing any PII. And I'm going to go to Tanya now to answer about the RRH projects.
Thanks, Kara. So we got one question about if you discover that a rapid rehousing project was inadvertently missed on the HIC, can you add it now? The answer is no. In terms of updating the HIC, that is set for 2022. But if you notice that some inventory was missing on the HIC, and that's why there's discrepancies between your HIC and your LSA, you can just explain in a note that the HIC was missing this project, it had X number of beds, and that explains the discrepancy. Especially for rapid rehousing, we expect some discrepancies there because the HIC reporting requirements for rapid rehousing only allow you to report the number of beds that were that had people in them on the night of the HIC. So keep that in mind as well. There was another question regarding HIC inventory, and that some HIC inventory was added incorrectly in the HIC, and your LSA inventory is more accurate. How should we explain this in response to the warning flags? And you can just explain that. Explain that the HIC was incorrect and that the LSA data is more accurate, and that's sufficient for us.
Thanks, Tanya. And so Victoria, for your notes with data issues.
So this is from, and apologies if I mispronounced the name, Surain. When our notes for programs have data issues, can we start inputting notes for programs with flag errors by January 11th or starting now? So first, if you could give a little bit more context, January 11th is the deadline for all notes and all data corrections for the LSA. So you don't want to go past that. If I am having a little trouble understanding the question, but I would encourage you to, if you haven't already, begin inputting notes on your warning flags for all projects. If there is something to add that's relevant. I have seen some COCs input a note that says something to the effect of, we're working with this provider, or we've notified this project and they're working on data corrections. That's fine. You can input that type of note if that is all the information that you have. But you can also save some time by not adding that type of note until you have something that is concrete and provides context into what's actually happening. All that to say, please don't wait. We are well underway with this process, and so it is beneficial for y'all to begin entering your notes as you are able for these warning flags.
And just to follow up on that, for those of you who have come to multiple of these, when we first started on HMIS admin calls and these office hours, we encouraged people to address errors first. And then because resolving errors can impact can resolve warning flags or create new warning flags or whatnot. And so as a way to kind of, if you're still in that process of just starting to work on your flags right now, that's still the recommendation, to kind of look at some of those errors first. In general, more specific questions and determinations about that you should ask your liaison, and they can look specifically at all of your flags to kind of help you with that process if you'd like it. But for those of you who have been working on errors and warning flags and resolving issues in your HMIS, and now you have a number of warning flags that are the, warnings are improbabilities in the data, but they can still be correct. And so if they are correct, you've double checked everything and you're like, yep, this is right. You can start adding, to just, follow on to Victoria's point, you can start adding those notes in, and you don't have to have all notes added before you submit to our team for review. This will help our team kind of, be able to review on a more even level across the next month instead of getting all of the notes in the last week. The last week is hard for our staff to keep up with and get them turned back around to you guys to provide more information. So it's helpful to submit something now. And if we do need more information from you, we can submit those back, and there's still time for you to add more before the deadline. Victoria, did you want to follow up on Surain's follow-up, or?
Yeah, so the follow-up that Surain has is essentially, when can you start inputting notes without fear of technical issues from HDX? I unfortunately do not have a solid answer for you on a date. I do, however, know that like Sean said before, and I reiterated before, the notes themselves are recoverable. So we are able to get any notes from previous uploads. So I don't want you to hold off on inputting notes into HDX because of the hesitancy there. We will be able to work with you and your COC to get those back for you. My worry is that if you wait close enough to January 11th, that you will not have enough time to sufficiently address some of those warnings.
Yeah, and I do want to just follow up on something that Sean said earlier, as far as the note issue from this year. I know some people experienced losing notes last year. The issues that we've had with notes this year have been different, and the solutions have been different. So if you haven't submitted any notes so far, we don't anticipate, crossing our fingers, we don't anticipate you to have any issues going forward. It is like a select group of people that had notes earlier in the process and are re-uploading and resubmitting notes. So if you haven't added notes yet, you're probably fine. Again, if anyone is experiencing any new issues, definitely, like Sean said, reach out to your liaison so we can look into those ASAP. Sean, and are you ready for the response for Caitlin?
Yes, I'm just looking. We also had another question that was related.
Yeah.
Let's see, I just want to make sure I cover them both.
Okay.
It seems like somebody else might have taken that one. We have our own system for recording these questions, so we're just going through those now. Thanks everybody for your patience. Okay, well, let me just address the question that is outstanding from Caitlin. So Caitlin asks, if we're working with providers on certain warnings, should we wait until those issues are hopefully resolved before submitting notes for review, or would it be better to submit with comments and then upload a new file if we get those warnings cleared? Basically, Caitlin, you can feel free to upload now, even if you know your data set isn't completely clean. For me personally, as a reviewer, it's nicer to get a cleaner data set because it's a little bit quicker to review. But if you'd like to get if you like to get feedback earlier, then now is a good time to do it, just because there tends to be more traffic on our end, and it sometimes gets hard and sometimes even really like not feasible for us to give a 48-hour review because of the volume of submissions that come in as we get closer to the deadline. So it could also be helpful depending on how much support you feel like you need or how much guidance. You might just talk to your liaison directly. That could be another strategy. So it's basically up to you. I would say, like, go ahead and submit if you want. I find it a little bit easier to do a review if you haven't left on things that you know that you're going to address. If you just don't leave a note that says, I'm going to address this, because then that basically means your reviewer does need to take a look because you've made an edit, right? So if you leave the status as note required, then we'll just send it back to you, and the expectation will be that you will deal with it later. So that may just make things a little bit quicker, but this we'll look at everything anyways, basically. So kind of a long-winded answer. The short answer is go ahead and submit if you want.
And Victoria, I will let you go next with a couple that you're ready for. And I will say we might be jumping around just because, like Sean said, with our process, so we might jump around topics, but we will try and answer everyone and come back to them. So go ahead, Victoria, on the couple you have ready.
Yeah, so I've got one from Lydia on the topic of head of household issues. So she writes, we're finding that our issues are most commonly related to households with overlapping enrollments and different head of household assignments per enrollment. For example, both members of an adult-only household may be individually enrolled in emergency shelter and marked as head of household for the stays, but they're also enrolled together in rapid rehousing, where one is set as the head of household and the other adult as spouse or partner. And it either causes multiple head of households to appear in rapid rehousing re-entry or as a missing head of households in one of the shelter entries. So these are a little tricky, the head of household issues here. One thing that I would note though, Lydia, is what you are describing is actually allowable under the HMIS data standards. You can have households that have a combination of like the same individuals and they have, you know, different head of household assignments for each enrollment. That's perfectly fine. What this sounds like, what instead might be something with the household ID. So something that I have seen in other COCs recently is the household ID itself is being shared or duplicated across enrollments. And that is also a no-no and would also contribute to head of household ID issues. To clarify, there can only be one head of household per enrollment. And on that note, for a household ID, that is, what's the word I'm looking for? The household ID should be unique per enrollment. So if what you are seeing on the reporting side of things is that these clients are sharing the same household IDs from their shelter enrollment to their rapid rehousing enrollment, that can cause an issue. But the instance where you've got, you know, these two clients separately as their own head of household, and then they enter another project together and one is a head of household and another one isn't, that is fine. That is allowable under the HMIS data standards. So because that's what you're describing, to me, that does not seem like it is the issue. I think you would want to check maybe the underlying household IDs for those particular clients to see if there's something going on there.
Great, and I'm gonna answer some questions about submission. So we've got a couple of questions from various people about submission. So I'm just going to run through them. So how long of a time will reviewers need to review the flag, the warnings, and when should you submit? So basically, our goal as a review team is to review warning notes within 48 hours. As Sean mentioned, depending on how many notes are being submitted, that can, and how many questions through the inbox and stuff like that are being submitted at one time, that might be longer. Another reason why our response times might be longer is if we have a very specific question that someone needs to follow up on within our internal team. Two things I will point out is that when we make something, this might not be the case for a lot of people, but if you have 10 warning notes and 9 of them have been answered by the review team, and but it hasn't been submitted back to you because they're waiting on that, an answer to that final, the 10th question. If they've put all of the other answers in and saved them, you will be able to see the answers even if they're not in your court. You'll also be able to see the flag status change. They might wait till they have all the answers before kind of making them all visible to you. But that's one way you might be able to see some before they get sent back to you. And then there's some specific questions about what days and times that you should submit by. It's really impossible to know. I would say that I would try to submit some warning notes if you have them this year, so that the review team can get back to you. And then if they need more, so what will happen is, and I think this kind of addresses something someone else asked, if let's say you have 20 warning notes or 20 warning flags and you submit 10 notes, and then let's say your review team says 5 of them are sufficient, they go into a green status, nothing else for you to do, and 5 of them say, we need more information, and there's a note saying like what kind of information we need to know, and then you're able to kind of resubmit more information on those 5. Hopefully when we review again, all of those new 5 are green again, and then you have that like remaining 10. So it can be in pieces like that, both on how many you submit and what the sufficient and need more information. Another note, if you have submitted a note and you upload again and the data have changed for the underlying note, the status will change saying like, need more information from COC, data have changed, and that will go back to you. We put that back in your court because we want COCs to take the first glance at like, with this new data, does the note still make sense? And if the note still makes sense and it's still right, then you can submit it back to us for review. If it doesn't, or you need to edit the note, then you have that opportunity and we will review again. So just briefly getting at that. And then I will go to Megan if you want to kind of whatever ones you want to address. I think just maybe Nate. Oh, did I address that?
Did you already address the issue of updating the note associated with the flag?
Yes. So Nate first about the copy and resubmit the previous note. Sean, actually weigh in on this. They do need to put a new note in to submit it back to us, right? So they can just copy and resubmit the note.
I'm sorry, I'm not total. I didn't follow the question.
Yeah, no, that's okay. If the data have changed, but the note still applies, in order to submit it back to us, can they just copy and paste the note they already submitted so that and put it back in and resubmit it to us?
Yeah. The whole reason that we have it set up like that is because we just want to call your attention to the fact that you may have made some changes in your HMIS that have resulted in the data have changed. It's useful to include something that says that you acknowledge that the data have changed and your note still stands. So I would copy the note and then include as your last sentence, like we're aware and this is still what we want to submit. Then you've left a comprehensive note that is what will be output if you export the warnings. So that'll be kind of the authoritative last note. Does that
Yeah, I think that's
does that
perfect.
work? Okay. Related, Kara, maybe I can just
Yeah,
take
go
on.
ahead.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
go for it.
Teddy asks if the notes are exportable. Yes, Teddy, the notes are very much exportable. So basically, you'll just go to the data quality flag views. Once you click on your official upload, and above all those, table that you see of warnings and errors, you'll see an export flags button on the right side. So just click on that and you'll get a spreadsheet download very conveniently that you can keep for your own records that will have everything. So just don't expect to re-upload that in the system. Basically, everything that you do and all the notes that you leave need to be in HDX. They can't happen like they used to years ago in like a spreadsheet format that you would send to your liaison. You're not going to do that. You're going to leave everything in HDX. Okay.
And just one note on that, only the most recent note will be exported. So another kind of, if you get it sent back to you and say we need more information, and you just add the more information and then you export that, you'll only have that last note. So as Sean has been dutifully saying so much throughout this whole process, make your most recent note as comprehensive as possible, so you can also copy and paste that previous and then just edit, add the new information, etc. So when you export, you'll have the whole thing and you won't have to go searching through things to find. And then Sean, I think you have another one, right?
Yes, yeah. So Stephanie asked the submission, if the submission is due on 1/11. Yes, Stephanie, it's due on 1/11, which is a day of the week. Wednesday, yeah. So, and what happens if you need more time? So, basically, it's great if you can get it submitted on time. That's the goal. If you do need some extra time because of some extenuating circumstance, the best thing for you to do is to submit an AAQ. That kind of officially gets it registered on HUD's radar. So again, to submit an AAQ, the easiest way to do that is to be into HDX and then scroll down to the footer, which you'll see a link to the AAQ desk. So go ahead and submit that. Explain why you need it, because then HUD is more likely to give you some kind of extension. But they're not super forgiving all the time. So basically, I would just recommend that you can do whatever you can to actually get your submission in before the deadline. And it just behooves everyone for folks to get an early start because, again, there's a lot of traffic as we get closer to the deadline.
And then Victoria, I see you have a number of responses, so take it away.
Yeah, so I just want to jump back to that head of household issue that we were talking about. Laura asks, are you saying that staff need to create a new household when a family moves from emergency shelter to rapid rehousing, for example? When I talk about household IDs, it's hard for me to give a concrete answer because it is actually vendor dependent. There are some vendors where the creation of a new household ID happens automatically at the start of the enrollment. For other vendors, it is a series of intermediary steps in order to create a new household ID to go along with the new enrollment. So if you are unsure, I think it is important to reach out to your vendor to get the steps necessary to ensure that you are getting a new household ID, a unique household ID per enrollment each time for your households. Yareli is saying, as for another head of household example, if the ES and rapid rehousing enrollments happen on the same day, it will cause an error in the data quality tool, at least in our HMIS. I feel like that might be related to what we are currently talking about. However, if you could either drop into the chat or reach out to your liaison with the exact wording of the error that you're getting in the data quality tool so that we can better assist you with that. All right, I'm just gonna keep moving along. So we've got a question from Michelle. What do we do for flags like 693, adult child households in emergency shelter served on a specific date? So this is a flag that says the number of youth ages 22 to 24 in an AC parenting youth household is greater than the total number of people in parenting youth households where the oldest adult is in between this 18 to 24 range. Lots of COCs have questions about this particular flag, as well as related flags regarding age. What I go to first, or what I always think of first with these flags, is thinking about whether or not some clients in some households have actually aged into one population group and out of another. So what you might want to look for this flag is, isolate the clients implicated in the flag. So in this particular example, you would want to look at your adult child households served in emergency shelter on April 30th that fall within this 18 to 24 age range, and they are also parents. If you can isolate those clients, it looks like there's probably 7 total in your example here, Michelle, and just take a look at the date of births. Do those seem accurate and correct? If not, big check there. And then, is there any instance where a client maybe had a birthday either during their enrollment or in between enrollments, where they moved from essentially they turned from 21 to 22. I will say that if you have a small discrepancy with these types of flags, and when I say small discrepancy, 5 or less, and that's typically what I have seen in other COCs, there really isn't anything to be done other than just a confirmation that you've checked the date of birth for the clients that are relevant to this flag, and everything looks above board, because I think it's just like a natural process that people have birthdays in a year. So for those small discrepancies, please don't sweat it. We don't expect you to correct data that does not need to be corrected. It's when those discrepancies are very large that we have concerns, because that would then point to a perhaps larger underlying issue with data quality, or a programming issue on the back end with your LSA report. So for small discrepancies, it's really just a matter of checking if there was some aging in and out of one population and into another. And that's essentially what we would hope to see in a note for these small discrepancies. Okay. Let me know it. Oh, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
I just wanted to give you a second to breathe, Victoria. I know I think some of the remaining questions might be best fielded by you, but in the meantime, I can address Surain's question. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Surain asks, if we have more than one flag that has the same note, can we add basically the same note to those different flags, if I'm understanding that correctly, Surain? And the answer is yes. Feel free to add the same note on multiple flags if the issue is the same issue. In fact, there is a way for you to do that in mass. And I'm just getting a fake system up so that I can show y'all what that's like now. But basically, Surain, if you're in your submission, then you'll see warnings that you can click on. Let me just get there, and then I'll share my screen. That's okay. I know we've got 15 minutes left and a good number of questions to answer, but
I think we're doing okay, Sean.
Okay, great.
Take your time.
Great. So this is a very useful feature that was requested, I think, last year. So basically, if you have those kinds of issues, this is a fake data set, so no issue here. Suppose you wanted to leave the same note on all of these comparison questions. You can just click these little boxes here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see better. And then you'll see that this note or this button gets activated. When there's nothing clicked, then you don't have the ability to bulk update flags. But suppose you wanted to do that, you'll click all of these, and then you'll say some useful explanation. Obviously, it's something better than that. You'll click update, and then you'll notice that in the system, this is saying the current HDX team note because I'm still logged in as myself. But otherwise, you'll see that same note is applied on each one of the flags. So you're seeing a slightly different version because you're seeing my version as an HDX team member, but basically that's how you use the bulk update feature.
we're getting a thank you. This is a great feature and enhancement. It
Great,
is.
happy to hear it.
Victoria, did you want to go in on the RRH
Yeah, sure.
questions?
So Rosie is asking regarding rapid rehousing bed and unit inventory. We have some errors where the LSA error states there are no AC households that were served during the reporting period. When you look at HMIS, though, only adult-only bed unit inventory was set up for the information that was provided at project setup. Is it acceptable to add the adult child bed and unit inventory now to correct the issue, or best explain the error using a nose? I do want to, So typically what happens with these flags, especially when there are situations where the flag says this household type has not been served in this project for this reporting period. So adult child households were not served during this reporting period. Usually one of the reasons why that triggers is because there is actually bed and unit inventory for that household type in the inventory file. So that is something to look into to see if there are actually AC beds and units for the project when there actually was no adult child households served in the project. That is fine. If that is like the reality of the project, that's just how it is. In terms of like what should you do to correct that issue, if it is a large discrepancy in the number of beds, I'm just thinking of a COC that I looked at recently that they did not serve adult child households in their project, but they had 45 beds that were dedicated to adult child households. For discrepancies that are that large, I would recommend that you go into HMIS and update the bed inventory to be reflective of what was actually utilized. So like their project thought that they were going to serve adult child households, but the need actually turned out to be for adult only. And so in retrospect, they should have had those beds for adult only. Doesn't mean that just because they only have adult only beds in the system that is only what they can serve. It's just more reflective of what was happening on the ground. For smaller discrepancies in bed inventory, and I'm thinking of COCs where I've seen issues with like 1 bed, 2 beds. I mean, I don't want to pick a fight over 1 and 2 beds. So notes giving context into why those bed discrepancies exist would be very beneficial for those types of situations. But also just remember moving forward that when you do have those larger bed discrepancies, it is worth it to go back and update the bed inventory so that it's actually reflective of what's happening. And then David is asking a related question. Should we change inventory to remove flags, or should we just offer explanation in notes? Again, I think that is highly dependent on what the flag is about and how large that inventory discrepancy is. You know, once you're getting close to 10 beds, you're really going to want to think about updating your inventory in HMIS to be more reflective of what actually happened within the reporting period. Change inventory. I also want to, that is somewhat related, are flags regarding, you know, you'll see flags that say your inventory on the date of the point in time count was this, but this is what you have in your LSA for the same amount, for the same date. For those kind of comparison inventory flags, we do have the expectation that the unless there is an issue on the HIC where bed inventory was not reported correctly or as expected on the HIC, those numbers should match because it is just a single point in time. The only difference would be for rapid rehousing because the guidance between how you collect and report rapid rehousing inventory from the HIC to HMIS is different.
So Sean, I think maybe you can answer the one from Serene on the flag ID with many digits.
Yep. So Surain asks, he said that, or she, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to assume, or they, have said they've received flag IDs with many digits. Is the format correct? The flag ID example is 859-482.0.2921.0. The short answer is yes. In some cases, you'll see the flag IDs that are rather complicated. Basically, this is the way that the system identifies the flag ID. So no issue there. Let us know if you find some issue with what's in the flag. If you think that that's erroneous, you could just, if that's the case, you can just get in touch with your liaison. But otherwise, please proceed.
I've got,
And yeah, Victoria, I'll just jump in whenever you feel ready.
yeah, so I've got, let's see, a number of questions here about overlaps. So Lucia is asking, one of our warnings indicates that the sum of bed nights is greater than the unduplicated count of bed nights. And according to the data quality tool, they do not have an overlapping enrollment issue. What else could be causing the warning? So if you haven't already, reach out to your liaison with the exact number of the discrepancy, because if it is large and you have gone into your system, made your corrections, reference the data quality tool, then the next thing would be to talk with your vendor to see if there's anything going on there. And that is especially true if the overlap discrepancy is a very high number. Let's see. And then Laura is saying that providers struggle to identify and solve the overlap issues related to shelter enrollments. Should they prioritize based on how many days the overlaps were? Those do feel like speaking as someone who spent a lot of time cleaning up data from emergency shelters, it does feel like the low-hanging fruit or like the best bang for your buck are to target those enrollments that just seem like their overlaps are so outside of the norm. And that could be where you've got duplicate client records and their overlap is 1-to-1. So like same day, same exit, everything like that. And then you've got overlaps that are pretty significant in time, where the overlaps might be like half of the entire enrollment. So I do think if you can identify those overlap enrollments that are especially long, that would help to cut down the number. In terms of prioritizing, I'm just trying to think of like, I also know and have experienced firsthand how providers struggle to identify and solve overlap issues. Yeah, I'm just thinking of like my HMIS admin days and just lots of trainings, but that was also very difficult with lots of turnover. So I feel that struggle there. But to go back to the original question, yes, do tackle the easiest overlaps first, and then kind of work your way down from there. And then Brett is asking, we've got 3 warnings around bed nights. We've reviewed all information in our HMIS, have fixed all duplicated or overlapping entries, and the warning has not changed when we upload a test file in HDX. So in terms of test files, do you mean a local file or local use file, or are you going in and actually replacing your official upload into HDX? So that's one thing. I also would circle back around to what I mentioned before. If the discrepancy seems especially large and you have used all the reporting tools available to you to identify and fix these overlapping enrollments, and you're still seeing these issues, then you may want to reach out to your vendor.
Okay, let me take, we've got 3 minutes left. We still have outstanding questions from Beth and Jerry. The Victoria, maybe you can take a look at when you have a second. But otherwise, let me address another question from Surain. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Okay, it looks like that was addressed. Basically, the short answer, Serena asks, notes are needed for flat warnings. Is that correct? Yes. If notes are required on all warning flags, you're not able to leave notes in errors because we expect there not to be errors, in short. And if you're seeing some issue with leaving notes, it might be because you've uploaded a local use file in which you cannot leave any notes because the HTX team doesn't review those. So make sure it's an official HUD review file. And if that's the case, then yes, you should leave notes on all warnings.
So Brett replied, yes, we upload a local use to see if we have fixed flags between note cycles. I would recommend always uploading official use during this LSA period. Sean I don't want to step on your toes, Sean, but the local use files can be used for televising your data, and therefore you can upload shorter periods of time or fewer projects. And because of that, we don't run all of the flags on local use files. So if you're using a local use file to determine what flags you have, you are probably not going to get all of the flags that your LSA official file will have. There's really no downside unless there is a random server error that happens if you try to upload an official file, which you could then try to upload local, and well, we're sorting out the issue, or you and your vendor are sorting out the issue, but I would recommend just always uploading an official use file and replacing that file. I guess if you're worried about losing, getting a rejection or whatever, you can upload both local use and official so that you have something to look at, well, if there's any issues.
I agree with Kiara, and I might just also add, Brett, that's great. You're using the local use zip file for exactly what it's used for, which can be like a kind of a sandbox. So if that helps you do your cleaning, that's great because it's less work for us to do, basically. And that's exactly the idea of having a good system like HDX, like we have. So, but Kiara's right that you'll get better information if you submit as an official use file. So it's a good first step is the local use file and then the official use, because we'll actually take a look at that.
So I want to briefly say it is 3 p.m. This recording and all of the questions and answers will be posted sometime next week, and a listserv will go out with that information that you can find that on. There are just a couple more that I don't know if, Victoria, you want to can you quickly address, or?
Yes, I can. So Jerry is asking about not seeing the project type in the inventory CSV file. They are there, but they are coded as numeric. So that makes it tricky. The HMIS data standards does have the project type associated with the projects. And actually, I can send you some resources, Jerry, about that. So I'll follow up with your liaison. Oh, I'm sorry, not project type. I hear what you're saying. I'm not making sense right now, because I'm trying to make sense of my brain vomit in like 10 seconds. So apologies. I will reach out to you, Jerry, and get you the information that you need. I didn't mean to say project. It was something else.
And we'll put the information and answer in the Q&A when
yes.
All Q&A docs are official reviewed answers. Go ahead.
And then Beth Carroll is asking about what could be causing an error in the LSA calculated values. There is a flag that says no one was served in a specific project type, but when she looks at the client enrollment data, there are clients enrolled in the project. If it is a rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing project, you'll also want to check on your move-in dates for that project to see if there were any move-in dates entered for those enrollments, because that is something that I have seen as show up as an issue. If they are not rapid rehousing for PSH projects, but are instead emergency shelter and transitional housing, reach out to your liaison about that, and we may work with you and potentially your vendor to see if there's something underlying happening there.
There was also one question two people had. Does it in some way actually do more harm than good to nudge bed inventories by 1 or 2 beds, or are those changes just a pain on our end, so you're being nice?
Maybe it's a bit of both. I'd say you know, adding unnecessary complication to the reporting, I don't think it adds unnecessary complication to the reporting if it resolves the issue. But I also recognize that COCs right now in the whole process of data cleaning have bigger fish to fry other than a bed or 2. So I would rather COCs focus on the big problems in their data quality right now that they know are resolvable before they make some of these smaller changes.
So we are past a couple minutes past time. As I said, we will get the last couple followed up in our Q&A. And if you want a faster response, because again, that won't be till next week, you can reach out directly to your liaison with those questions. Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you after the new year.
Thanks, everyone.